She screamed as they ripped her baby from her arms, her voice slicing through the snow like a dying animal's cry. The sheriff didn't flinch. The CPS agent wouldn't meet her eyes. Behind them, the man who had saved her life lay bloodied in the snow, thrown down like trash for daring to speak. All because someone powerful wanted her silenced. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. It began with snow. Thick, silent, indifferent snow. The wind bit through Emily Carter's threadbare coat as if it were paper. Each flake that settled on her lashes was a needle of cold, a silent reminder that she didn't belong. Not here, not anymore. She tightened her arms around baby Noah, his tiny breath fogging against the worn scarf she had wrapped around his face. His soft whimpers broke through the silence like the last notes of a hymn sung over a grave. Behind her, the screen door creaked shut, the final punctuation of a life erased. The house, once filled with her husband James's laughter, now loomed like a tomb. The porch light flickered once, then died. It was Ruth Carter's doing, she had no doubt, cutting power to the porch as if to erase even the shadow Emily cast. Ruth's last words rang in her ears like a slap. "James is gone. You're not family, and we never wanted that baby." Emily didn't cry. There were no tears left. Grief had wrung them dry days ago. She stared into Paul Carter's eyes before she turned away. The man hadn't spoken once, not even at his own son's funeral. He had only watched Emily with that cold glacier gaze, like she was a stray mutt nosing around their legacy. But it hadn't always been like this. James had brought her here 3 years ago, full of dreams and conviction. "They'll come around," he'd said after their wedding, his thumb brushing her cheek, eyes full of faith. "They're just old-fashioned." Old-fashioned, yes, but also proud, rigid, and quietly venomous. The Carters believed in bloodlines, in heritage, in purity. A city girl of mixed race with a degree in social work was a stain on their blood-soaked Wyoming soil. She remembered Ruth smiling thinly at the wedding, gripping James's arm like a hostage, and whispering through her teeth, "A Carter doesn't marry a cause." Still, James had stayed by her side. They carved out their own life in a trailer on the edge of the property, raising chickens, planning for the future. Then the rodeo accident. One misstep, one broken spine, one funeral, and she was a widow with no rights, no allies, no home. Emily's fingers fumbled with the stroller handle, ice crunching under her boots, worn-down flats with holes in both soles. The wheels jerked sideways in the snowdrift, barely moving. "I won't beg," she muttered through clenched teeth. She stepped off the porch, not knowing where the road ended, only that it no longer led back. It began with smoke, thin, wavering, impossibly far, and her only hope. Emily's legs gave out halfway up the hill, the stroller abandoned hours ago, its plastic frame too frail for the terrain. Her arms ached from carrying Noah, who had long since stopped crying and now lay limp in her coat, quiet in a way that terrified her more than any scream. The forest was endless, towering pines packed so tightly together they strangled the light, and the silence between the trees felt ancient, almost watching. Each breath she took was a fight against the cold pulling her downward, whispering of sleep and surrender. But then, smoke, a thread of it curling into the pale sky, proof that somewhere beyond the bone-colored trees, someone still had fire. Her knees scraped against frozen earth as she crawled the final stretch to the cabin, the scent of burning cedar reaching her like a benediction. She didn't knock. She couldn't. Her body gave in, tipping sideways into the snow with Noah cradled beneath her. Her last thought before darkness crept in was absurd. Please, let them be kind. The door opened. Victor Granger saw a woman collapsed in front of his cabin like a corpse abandoned by the wind. He didn't curse, though he wanted to. He didn't question fate or fate's cruel habit of dropping people where they didn't belong. He just moved, swift, automatic, practiced. Inside, the cabin was as cold and jagged as the man who lived in it. Walls patched with old quilts, a battered iron stove, and shelves lined with canned beans and faded memories. Victor laid the baby down first, peeled off Emily's soaked layers next, working with a rough tenderness that spoke of trauma buried too deep to name. He didn't light the fire because he wanted to. He lit it because you didn't leave a baby to die. The fire crackled. The iron pot hissed. He didn't speak, and neither did she, at least not that first night. But when morning came and color returned to the baby's cheeks, Emily whispered, "Thank you." Victor grunted and turned away. She cooked what she could from his shelves, fumbling with ingredients foreign to her hands. He corrected her only with his eyes. When he slipped on the ice and came back limping, she wordlessly fetched a basin, water, cloth, and salve. He grumbled about city girls and fragility. She patched his leg and ignored the muttering. Days bled into each other like melted snow. He taught her to split wood without losing fingers. She told him about the city, not the traffic or noise, but the warmth of strangers in cafes and the quiet ache of subway lullabies. He never smiled. But one night, when Noah giggled in his lap while tugging at his beard, something in Victor's face loosened. Not joy, just less pain. And for Emily, that was enough. For now, Emily had just finished folding the last of the blankets when it came, 3 hard raps on the cabin door that froze the air thicker than the snow outside. She caught Victor's glance, alert, unreadable, and moved instinctively to Noah's cradle near the hearth. Her hand hovered over him, protective, trembling. The door creaked open. A badge gleamed. Sheriff Clay Monroe stepped in like he owned the place. Behind him, a Child Protective Services agent adjusted her clipboard and sniffed the air. Victor stiffened. He recognized Clay from long ago, back when uniforms meant something. That time was gone. "Ms. Carter?" the agent said, voice crisp, rehearsed. "We've received a credible report that your mental state may be compromised. For the safety of the child, we're required to intervene." Emily blinked. "What?" "Credible?" Victor rasped, stepping forward. "From who?" The agent didn't answer. Clay did, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Your whereabouts were unknown. That baby was considered missing." "Noah is my son," Emily snapped. "No one asked where I went. They threw me out." The CPS agent moved forward, reading from a sheet. "Report states emotional instability, erratic behavior, possible endangerment of an infant under extreme conditions." Victor's voice cracked the room. "She saved that baby. In my cabin. Fed him. Clothed him. Bled for him." But Clay was already striding past him. "Ma'am, step away from the child." Emily backed against the wall, her body shielding Noah. Her voice broke. Please don't take him." The agent reached out. Clay pulled Emily back. She fought like a wild thing, every inch of her refusing. Victor surged forward and was slammed against the stove by Clay's elbow. The old soldier hit the floor with a thud that echoed like gunfire. Emily screamed. Outside, the snowstorm howled like it knew what was being done. They left with Noah bundled in state-issued blankets. Emily's cries followed them into the trees, jagged and raw. She dropped to her knees in the snow, rocking back and forth, her arms empty, her world broken in a way that death hadn't managed to do. Victor rose slowly, ribs aching, lips split, but his eyes were clear for the first time in years. He knelt beside her, hand on her shoulder, voice like gravel and thunder. It began not with silence but with the roar of a courtroom being torn in two. Ruth Carter stood with clenched fists and trembling lips, her voice cutting through the oak-paneled room like a blade. "The likes of her will never raise a Carter boy. That child is ours, James's blood." Emily Carter stood motionless at the plaintiff's table, her spine straight, arms protectively cradling Noah. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The courtroom, jury, clerk, judge, had already seen the photographs of her frostbitten feet, the doctor's sworn statement of malnourishment, the logs Victor had meticulously kept of every day she sheltered in that cabin. They had seen the bruises on her pride and the unwavering calm with which she spoke the truth. "I was left in a snowstorm with my child," she'd said earlier, voice steady but raw. "They didn't ask if I had a place to go. They just locked the door behind me and turned off the lights." Her lawyer, a young public defender who had once been a foster child herself, let the silence sit until it grew sharp. Then she added, "All Emily Carter has ever done is survive what was meant to break her." Judge Whitmore, a man old enough to remember when families used to hide their sins in church pews, adjusted his glasses. His gaze fell hard on Paul Carter, who remained stoic, hands folded like a statue carved from shame. "False reporting, harassment, defamation, coordinated obstruction," he listed, his tone ironclad. "Not only is custody restored to the child's mother, but the defendants will each pay fines and submit to court-mandated counseling." A gasp came from Ruth. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. From the gallery, Victor Granger didn't move. Wrapped in his old army coat, boots dusty, beard neatly trimmed for once, he sat like a sentinel. His hands were still, resting on his cane, but his eyes, wet, wild with something unnameable, never left Emily. When it was over, Emily didn't cry. She simply turned, walked the aisle with Noah asleep against her chest, and passed Victor without a word. He rose beside her, wordless as always, a shadow becoming a shield. Months later, a fire burned in the hearth of a rebuilt cabin, one of 6. The laughter of children echoed through the woods. Victor sat on the porch, carving a wooden wolf, while Emily guided 2 young mothers through the basics of fire starting. She no longer looked over her shoulder. She no longer waited for the storm. The storm had come, and she was still standing. The world had tried to take everything. She gave it back nothing, except hope.